welcome into the latest edition of the Second Half Draft Show. I'm your host, Juice, flying solo this evening. It's been a while. It's been a few weeks since we've done a stream here for the Second Half Draft Show, so I wanted to make sure it happened. Of course, a lot going on in the world of football, and of course the NFL draft, and of course in everybody's lives. So, no Drew and Headley. I'm not anticipating Drew and Headley tonight. Maybe they make a surprise visit, but I'm not anticipating this evening. I just want to talk a little bit about the Week 8 slate, some observations I have from last week, and then get a mock draft in. It's been a while since we've done a mock draft as well. So rock with me this evening. Of course, my Hurricanes are currently playing. They're in a tough one here against Louisville. Haven't played well to this point. What's going on, Mr. C? Haven't played particularly well to this point. Carson Beck, a couple of INTs. It's one step forward, two steps back, seemingly, with Beck. Well, one week he looks phenomenal. The next week he looks pedestrian, almost, a liability at times. I think our run defense has struggled quite a bit this evening as well. But it's a one-score game here. Late or as the fourth quarter it gets underway, see if Miami's able to pull it out. But as I talk about the Friday slate, we got Minnesota and Nebraska currently underway, as well as some West Coast games, Utah State, San Jose State, Cal, North Carolina is actually traveling to Cal. Been a lot of conversation around Bill Belichick and that whole situation at UNC. So interesting matchup. But certainly we want to turn our attention to this Saturday, tomorrow's slate as well. Got some really good matchups in the SEC. At noon, you got LSU and Vandy. As a matter of fact, I'll pull up the schedule as we work through this, so we can all view it together. Let's see here. Give me just a second to share screen. Here we go. All right, let's make this a little bit bigger. All right, so I mentioned the LSU at Vanderbilt game. That's going to be a tough matchup. It's going to be a tough matchup. Vandy's a good team. They played Bama fairly well this past week. LSU has had its struggles on the offensive side of the ball. Garrett Nussmeier, one of the quarterbacks that we thought might be in the running for, that top quarterback ticket, he certainly hasn't played up to that standard, among others. And that's an area that I wanted to discuss as well in tonight's stream. Really the quarterback situation, man. Quarterback situation. And Miami just gave up a big play. Chris Bell is really making a lot of noise, man. Catching short passes and taking them the distance, running away from guys. You know what I mean? Making some of Miami's defenders look really slow at times. So, yeah, man, this is a tough one. It's Miami's up against it in this particular matchup. That said, going back to the LSU Vandy matchup, I think there's an opportunity for Nussmeier to really rehabilitate his draft stock. I think certainly he can help himself. I don't know that anybody is just running away with it. I know Fernando Mendoza of Indiana is really, in vogue right now, and he's played very well. Although the last couple of games he's looked a bit more human. He's played well enough. He's been steady enough. Of course, his team is winning, currently undefeated. So he's helped himself quite a bit as it relates to the quarterback position in the 2026 NFL draft class. But I still think there's a lot of football to be played. And some of the guys that obviously haven't played well, i.e. Nussmeier, I'm not so sure about Klubnik and that particular offense. I don't know that he's going to be able to get back into the conversation. Drew Aller gets hurt. He's hurt now, done for the season. James Franklin, the head coach of Penn State, former head coach of Penn State, is now fired after a couple of bad losses. One loss to Oregon turned into a bad loss to UCLA, and then another poor performance against Northwestern, and he's out. So it really seemingly is the Dante Moores of the world at Oregon, who's a younger quarterback. Obviously, this is the first year starting, so he may ultimately go back to school. Arch Manning clearly hasn't played well to this point. It's been tough. John Mateer coming back off of an injury really struggled last week. So it's wide open, but it does seem like the Fernando Mendozas and Lenore Sellers of the world seem to be the leaders in the clubhouse at the quarterback position. So I say all that to say Mettenberg is going to have an opportunity here to go on the road, play a ranked team, and help his draft stock for sure. All right, let's keep it going. Georgia Tech at Duke. You talk about well-coached football teams and teams that are physical. Georgia Tech certainly fits the bill. They're undefeated, currently ranked 12th in the country. Duke, Darian Mensah is another player, quarterback that, you know, depending on how this thing shakes out, it's a wide open landscape, right? You know, he has some intriguing tools. So if he's able to put on a good show against a really good Georgia Tech team, really good, solid, well coached, physical football team, you know, he could certainly start to turn some heads and get into this conversation among the quarterbacks in the 2026 NFL draft. And then, of course, you go to the Big Ten. You go to the Big Ten, you got Washington and Michigan, and you talk about the Denzel Bostons of the world and Justice Haynes. And, you know, Michigan has a number of intriguing defensive players that may be eligible here for the 2026 NFL draft. Both of these teams strike me as ball clubs that can beat anybody on any given Saturday, right? I'm just not sure which version of these two teams is actually going to show up. You know, Mr. C, I'm interested to hear your thoughts about Washington. They're coming off a good win. I think the quarterback really settled in, had a big game. I think they need to get Jonah Coleman more and more involved as it relates to this offense. But Washington and Michigan seemingly is like they could lose to anybody, and they're talented enough to beat anybody. I mentioned Justice Haynes. He's been really impressive, really impressive, a really explosive back. Really the engine to that Michigan offense. I know Bryce Underwood is a really highly touted freshman coming in, all world, expected to do incredible things. But Justice Haynes really is the linchpin of that Michigan offense. So we'll see how that particular game turns out. Keep going through here. What else we got? I mentioned Lenore Sellers and John Mateer, Oklahoma's at South Carolina. Another good opportunity here for these quarterbacks to help themselves. You know, South Carolina has a litany of defensive players, prospects. Nick Harbor, you know, obviously, you know, the size speed combination, rare size speed talent. I wonder if he's going to be able to actually put it all together through the balance of this season and make some headway as it relates to his draft stock. And then I go back to the Oklahoma situation, and you know, R. Mason Thomas is a ball of fire off that edge. I love to watch him play. But the focus here is obviously the transfer from Washington State, John Mateer. And what does he do after really struggling? He missed a game or two due to an injury. I think his throwing hand really struggled last week against Texas. You know, Oklahoma didn't really get anything going on the offensive side of the ball. Clearly impacted by that, and of course playing a very good, talented Texas offense. How does he bounce back? Because it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be easy against this South Carolina defense. You know, playing against South Carolina, another one of those schools teams that has an interesting blend of talent and can play up to anybody, right? Can really, you know, give anybody a run for their money, and then also play down to the competition a bit. So it'll be interesting to see what version of those two teams actually shows up tomorrow. Keep it going here. I talked about Fernando Mendoza, who certainly has everybody's attention. He's got everybody's attention, and you know, in a landscape where folks were expecting there to be multiple first-round quarterbacks that could come in and help an NFL organization, perhaps not immediately, but would be the future of a corresponding franchise. The quarterback landscape has gotten really murky, and Mendoza has consistently been a force, right, as far as helping himself in terms of his draft stock and really making his way towards the top of this board. And I want to talk about Mendoza. I'll stop here a little bit and talk about what I like about him and where my question marks kind of lie. So there's been a high for Mendoza, even entering the season, right? Coming out of Cal, entering the season. I think there was a thought process that, of course, he had the tools. He's got a very big arm, right? He's got prototypical size and a big arm. And that this offense, the Cignetti offense, might actually suit him better than what they played in at Cal, better surrounding cast. His name is escaping me, but I love their big possession receiver as well. Name's escaping. He plays really well. Physical team as well, Indiana, that is. But Mendoza operates this RPO at a very high level. You see the accuracy, you see the ball placement on a consistent basis. The thing about it is that you can't live in an RPO at the NFL level. It's just not going to last. It's a good drive starter. You can sprinkle it in, but you can't live in that. Now, I've seen a number of opposite hash throws down the field that have been really impressive. Like I said, Mendoza has a huge arm, but also considering his arm strength, he'll underthrow that go route a bit too consistently for my liking, right? So there's some areas of his game when he's moved off his spot, his accuracy, there's a bit of a precipitous drop off in terms of his accuracy and that ball placement that typically looks really good. So there's elements of his game that obviously I'd like to see him improve, but there's also a lot to like about him. So it'll be interesting to see whether or not he's able to maintain what he's done. He's got the big win against Oregon. He's had some big performances against quality football teams, i.e. Illinois. I think it'll be a really interesting storyline from here through the NFL draft process associated with Fernando Mendoza. Ohio State plays Wisconsin. Ohio State's defense is terrific, particularly their red zone defense, man. Like they might bend a little bit here and there, but they just find a way. They find a way to get your offense off the field, and oftentimes it results in no points. The amount of stops that they've managed to get inside the 5, and then of course they have a young quarterback who's growing in confidence, and they're finding those receivers, the Jeremiah Smiths, the Carnell Tates of the world. Tate's a good receiver. He's going to be in the 2026 NFL draft in all likelihood. I think Ohio State is that's a team that knows how to win. I don't think they're quite as talented as they were a season ago, but they've learned how to win and play winning football. Critical moments of the game. Carson Beck throws another INT. It's looking bleak, man. It's looking bleak. I don't think it's our night as far as the Canes, man. But I'll hang in. We'll see what happens. That said, Caleb Downs is Caleb Downs. Caleb Downs is going to do Caleb Downs things, right? And then, of course, Arvell Reese. Arvell Reese has really been the guy that has kind of, turned heads among, front 7 type defenders. He's kind of this hybrid linebacker, edge rusher. He just makes plays. He just constantly, you hear his name week in and week out. He's making a play. He's making a difference against the opponent. So he's a player that certainly has garnered a lot of attention. I think they have a couple of good defensive backs. I know Igbinosun is probably the more well-known one, but I like Matthews. I think Matthews is a quality corner too. So Ohio State, like every season, they have a litany of NFL talent, and they're going to be right in the thick of things, I think, throughout the balance of this particular season. Keep it going here. And I mentioned, there's some good matchups in the SEC. The one that jumps out here is Ole Miss at Georgia in the 3:30 window. But also, I think Texas A&M. If you haven't watched Texas A&M play to this point, if you have not watched them actually play and see what they're capable on either side of the ball, you're really doing yourself a disservice, because again, there's a lot of NFL talent here, quite a bit of NFL talent. KC Concepcion, I think he may have gotten banged up, but explosive receiver, the transfer from NC State. They got offensive linemen that are certainly going to be playing on Sunday. And then our guy, Cassius Howell, on the defensive side of the ball, man, the edge rusher, man. He just, as Headley put it on our Couch Potato General Manager channel, as he put it, it's just very difficult for an offensive lineman, an offensive tackle, to stay in front of him. He's got rare movement skills and the ability to bend. He's explosive. And, when he starts getting it going, the sacks come in bunches. You know what I'm saying? I think on earlier in the season, he had a sack on 3 straight snaps. You know what I mean? He's that kind of difference maker, and really has put it all together. Even last year, playing in kind of a spot duty, he was really effective, perhaps more effective than Shamar Stewart and Nick Scorton, who obviously are now at the NFL level. So check out Texas A&M. Ole Miss and Georgia. Georgia's a very interesting team. I think Gunnar Stockton is starting to impress me. I don't know that he's in that conversation. I'm not sure of where his class is. I haven't evaluated him through the prism of the NFL draft, but I think he's a very intriguing prospect. Georgia's playing a little bit better offensively. Carson Beck is insisting in throwing this game away. That said, Ole Miss is the 5th ranked team. They're the visiting team here, and this is going to be an interesting one. This one has big time implications. I think Georgia's favored by 7.5. So I don't know that the folks in Vegas feel that Ole Miss will be able to get it done in Athens, but I'll be paying attention to this game. Ole Miss has a number of prospects. I know we've talked about Suntarine Perkins quite a bit, the tweener, that edge rusher. Quite a bit here on this channel, and of course for Couch Potato General Manager in general, but the second half draft show for sure. see what type of prospect he is and what type of player he can be at the next level. I think it's going to be kind of interesting how he's leveraged. He's an edge. He's just very undersized. You know what I'm saying? Even when you talk about the edges that are on the lighter side, you know, the 240 type of guys, he's even lighter than that. So interesting to see how and whether or not a team will invest. I think it's going to hurt his draft stock, but he's a good player. Going to have my eyes peeled on that one. SMU Clemson. Clemson's not a good football team. Let's call it what it is. And they're not a good football team, but they have a ton of talent. They have a ton of talent. SMU is a pretty good football team. They're pretty good. I think they're one of the teams that can kind of beat anybody that they play. So we'll see how that one works out. Keep going. I think we're going to get into the 7:30 window here. Oh, actually, Texas Tech at Arizona State. Not as familiar with Arizona State's team outside of Jordan Tyson this year. I think he's among the top receivers. He and Mekhi Lemon seemingly are the top receivers in this class. Although people are going to have to start putting some respect on Chris Bell's name out of Louisville. I think he's leading the country or among the leaders in the country in terms of yards per game. He's got a pair of touchdowns tonight. Miami doesn't have an answer for him, but Texas Tech, man, Texas Tech. Romello Height, David Bailey off the edge, that's a problem, man. And we've talked about David Bailey extensively here on the second half draft show. You talk about edge rushers. As far as I'm concerned, it's Ruben Bain and then David Bailey. Of course, very different players, different body types. The way they win is different, but I think they are among, those two are probably the top edge rushers in this class for me at this point. Oregon at Rutgers, Oregon had the tough loss against Indiana. I mentioned Indiana went out there to Eugene and punched them in the mouth, right? Indiana was a more physical team. They rattled Dante Moore a bit, but I do expect Oregon to bounce back. I do expect Oregon to bounce back, and I think they're going to have better days ahead of him. I'll stop here for a bit to talk about Dante Moore because he is one of those prospects that if he finishes. He's already got off to a good start, although he struggled a bit last week. If he finishes strong, if he's finishing on the uptick, there's a lot to like about his poise at such a young age. Being a first time, full-time starter. I shouldn't say first time starter. He started at UCLA, but being the starter here for Oregon now after sitting behind Dylan Gabriel. Headley had mentioned that kind of reminds him of like he's watching Jaden Daniels. Just and I'm not talking about Jaden Daniels, early Arizona State Jaden Daniels, but I'm talking about, Heisman Trophy, LSU Jaden Daniels, the poise and the processing of what the defense is trying to do to you. You know what I mean? It's pretty impressive with Dante Moore. I think he can make most throws. And I want to see whether or not big play Miami. Let's get it. I want to see whether or not he actually finishes on that upward trajectory and decides to come out. I think he may benefit from going back to school, really, continuing to refine his craft. Obviously, he's going to be playing around a ton of talent. Although Oregon's offensive line, which supposedly has a ton of NFL talent, did not play well. Again, Indiana, I think, took it to Oregon. But it'd be interesting to see whether or not he leaves early because it's wide open. The quarterback group in the 2026 NFL draft class is wide open. And Dante Moore, as far as I'm concerned, has as good a shot right now as Lenoris Sellers or Fernando Mendoza, right? Just because of some of the pedigree that he comes with, the tools he possesses. And I think he has an opportunity, obviously, to finish on a very high note here in the 2025 season. So we'll keep an eye on him. Texas at Kentucky. I'm not sure what to expect from Texas week in and week out with their quarterback play. It's hard to predict what type of player or what type of offense we're going to get from Texas. At this point, it's been underwhelming. That said, Texas has a ton of NFL talent on either side of the football. There you go, Malachi Tony. We're right back in it, man. We need to stop on defense, Canes. Let's get it. Penn State, I mentioned it at the top. They're playing Iowa, and Iowa, I thought – and like I said, I have a film breakdown of Fernando Mendoza coming. I thought Iowa really took it to Indiana. They didn't have enough firepower to get the win, but they controlled the line of scrimmage, and I thought they rattled Mendoza. I think they rattled Mendoza, got him off his spot quite a bit. The way Penn State has played these last couple of weeks, listen, Iowa was the favorite entering this game, 3.5 favorite. Penn State fires their head coach, no Drew Aller. I'm not sure where Penn State goes from here. You know, Zane Durant defensively, you got, Singleton on the offensive side of the ball, you got a few receivers. Like there's talent in Penn State, but it just hasn't come together. And I don't know that an interim coach is going to be the solution to, whatever is happening here in Happy Valley. So we'll see. We'll see about the whole Penn State situation and see who ends up being the head coach there. Tennessee at Alabama in the 7:30 slot, as well as USC at Notre Dame. So a couple of big games here. A couple of big games. I think Tennessee has a quarterback. Brazel, the receiver, is having a huge year. There's some defenders, edge rushers that I like at Tennessee. This should be a good game. This should be a good game. I know Drew mentioned last weekend that he thinks Ty Simpson, who's kind of waited for his opportunity to start here at Alabama, could make some noise as far as the quarterback group in this 2026 NFL draft. I'm not quite as bullish on that thought, but again, as I mentioned, it's wide open. Quarterback conversation for the 2026 NFL draft is wide open. Whoever those players are, whoever those signal callers are who finish strong and then nail that pre-draft process, they could hear their name called sooner rather than later, because there's quite a few teams in the NFL who are going to be looking for a signal caller. You got a bunch of 40-year-olds starting. You got late 30s who have injury concerns. You got guys on the those 2-year, 1-year kind of prove it deal type situations. So there's going to be some new names, some new players under center for several of these NFL teams in 2026, certainly in 2027. So all of these quarterbacks, even the ones that have underperformed, as I mentioned, the Klubniks, the Nussmeyers of the world, that there's an opportunity. There's an opportunity here to kind of rehabilitate your draft stock, because teams are going to be needy. And we've seen it. We've seen over the years how NFL teams will overdraft quarterbacks. All right. Okay. Several more interesting matchups. I mentioned the USC Notre Dame game. I love the pair of running backs there in Notre Dame with Love and Price. That's one of the best pairs, if not the best pair in the country. Mekhi Lemon has been a monster. We talked about Jacoby Lane, did a film breakdown. Drew did on him on the Couch Potato General Manager channel. Lane is very excited, but Lemon is polished, man. I think Headley's onto something. You see maybe a smaller Amon St. Brown. And, if Miami could figure out how to stop Chris Bell over the middle, I think we can actually win this game. But that's yet to be seen, yet to be figured out. That said, USC, Notre Dame, this is college football playoff implications. You know what I'm saying? This particular contest. You know what I mean? And Notre Dame is heavily favored, -9.5, effectively 2 scores. So we'll see how that game plays out. We got Missouri at Auburn, Utah at BYU. I think at 8 o'clock, that Utah BYU game is intriguing because, you got a pair of offensive tackles there in Fano and Lomu that, are generally thought of as first-round prospects, right? And BYU typically is a physical team that is well coached and can put some pressure on opposing quarterbacks, opposing coaching staffs, really, with how buttoned up they generally are. So that's an intriguing contest there. Cincinnati at Oklahoma State. Florida State goes out west late. Shout out Helly. 10:30 to face off against Stanford. So that's your slate. That's your week 8 slate there. I think with that, I want, Mississippi Nebraska, I had the same thought. If Milroe stays, man, I am almost certain. I am almost certain that he's the first quarterback off the board. I'm almost certain. He takes incremental step in terms of his passing ability. He's definitely, in the conversation, I should say. You know what I mean? So that being said, he ultimately goes to Seattle, and Sam Darnold, slinging Sammy. Sammy's looking good. That Jackson Smith and Jigba combination is firing on all cylinders. Clearly, they knew what they had moving off of DK Metcalf. Mississippi Nebraska here. My dogs have a chance to get it done tomorrow. I think Jonah Coleman, DeMar Williams is kind of pick your poison why Jonah's number is slowing down a little bit. Yeah, I think Washington could certainly beat Michigan. I think they can absolutely beat Michigan. There's no question about that. If Washington kind of gets out of its way, they would be in the thick of things. They may end up in the thick of things here in the Big Ten, right? Still a lot of football to be played. That's the plan. I see you. I see you. You know, the question with Darnold is, what does it look like year two? You know what I mean? That's what it looks like, and then perhaps less about year two and more about the playoffs. What does it look like in Darnold in terms of the playoffs? So, yeah, give Milroe as much time as possible to get prepared, get his sea legs under him before he starts, being the guy under center. Can I have Chris Bell to play with JSN? Look, man, I like it. Bell has the frame and he's got the juice, man. You're talking 6'2", 220 and running away, pulling away from defensive backs. So really impressive prospect there. A lot of NFL talent on that Louisville team. Like I said, tough out for Miami there. We'll see. There are about 6 minutes left in that game. All right. Let's get into, which I'm sure most folks are looking for, the NFL mock draft, 2026 NFL mock draft. We have not done one in a while, but I think now's a good time to just get a sense of what the other mock draft simulators are talking about. So here we have a tendency to use the mock draft database, mock draft simulator. Let's see how the rankings are kind of shaking out, and we'll work through a bit of a mock draft. We'll keep it short since it's a solo effort. I'm really intrigued to see what Drew and Headley's thoughts as it relates to where prospects are kind of on their board at this point. We do need to do an update to our mock draft simulator, the Couch Potato General Manager mock draft simulator. So that'll be coming, and I think we're going to be moving back into a weekly cadence here with our live stream. Especially since we've been out of pocket for almost a month now. So really want to get back into the swing of things. But as I say that, let's see what this mock draft database is talking about. All right, we're gonna go all 32. I'm gonna put myself back up here in this top corner so we can see this screen a bit. Let's go all 32, and we'll keep it at one round for the purposes for the entertainment purposes, as they say on the Dan Le Batard show. All right, so get some of these ads out the way, man. It's a lot of ads going on here. Got to get your money. I understand mock draft database. Get your money. Okay, so as you can see, Mendoza is now at the top of the board. I certainly don't think he's the best player in the class, but there typically is a push as it relates to quarterbacks. Ruben Bain, in my mind, is the best player in the class. I actually saw an individual comment on my Ruben Bain film study, and that's going to be on the Couch Potato General Manager, the flagship channel, right? The Second Half Draft Show is a sister channel. But the flagship channel, that if Cleveland has an opportunity to pair Bain up with Myles Garrett, they should do it. And I might just do that here, right? I and the group here at Couch Potato General Manager feel like Shador should get an opportunity. Dylan Gabriel hasn't looked great, but I'm sure they're going to continue to try to evaluate him. I don't know that the Browns coaching staff is necessarily fans of Shador. It was a Jimmy Haslam owners type of selection. So we'll see how that all plays out. But let's get this mock draft underway here. Okay, so the New York Jets, man, I gotta tell you, I have held out hope for one Justin Fields longer than most. Longer than most. Shout out to your Mariners, man. But Justin Fields just does not have the pocket presence or processes quickly enough to be a consistent starter in this league. I just don't think that's the case. I know the Jets have personnel issues. They have coaching issues. I want Aaron Glenn to be successful, but he needs a more established offensive coordinator, because I just watching that game over the season. I think it was in Tottenham or Tottenham. It just looked bad. It just looked bad. Like the play selection didn't make sense. They struggled to get Garrett Wilson involved. I felt like anytime he was a matchup with PS2, the ball should have went to Garrett Wilson. They just don't have an identity. I know they want to run the football, but you get behind the chains, can't protect, quarterbacks on the ball too long, guys aren't creating separation. It just looks bad. The Jets need a quarterback. The Jets absolutely need a quarterback. And as I mentioned, right now, the leader in the core clubhouse is Fernando Mendoza. I think that is the leader in the clubhouse. Again, as I mentioned, I think there are some areas of his game where I don't feel really good about taking him first overall. But I think he has a skill set that is really, really intriguing, and teams, NFL teams, are going to see, like I said, that size, that arm, the accuracy, particularly on the first read. And again, if he nails the pre-draft process, I think he's going to go high. I think he will go high ultimately, especially as he finishes this season out strong with Indiana. So for the purposes of this mock draft, I'll take Mendoza first overall, but I don't feel great about it. There are elements of his game that I feel don't necessarily, you know, scream, first player off the board. But the Jets are in desperate need of a quarterback. So Fernando Mendoza to New York. I talked about the possibility of adding one Ruben Bain, the best player in the class, as far as I'm concerned. You can make a debate for Caleb Downs. You know, I mean, he's certainly a terrific player. But when you talk about the positions, you probably skew towards Bain. Match him up with Myles Garrett. There are other areas of this team that need to be improved. I certainly think the offensive line could be improved, but the thing about that is that I, I don't know that there's somebody that I like this high along the offensive line. So let's go with Ruben Bain. Let's just get the best player available. And I think certainly if Cleveland goes in a different direction, Baltimore absolutely has to take Ruben Bain. That said, they look bad. They look bad without Lamar Jackson. They look rough. Offensively, they're stuck in first gear. Defensively is probably the most damning of the situation because they can't seemingly get off the field. They can't affect the passer. They're talented on the back end, but they're not playing together as a team. There's a lot of breakdowns, and like I said, with the offense not necessarily being able to move the football, that just exacerbates things on the defensive side of the ball. So for Baltimore, I talked about them during our kind of our overview of the Week 8 slate. Give me David Bailey off the edge. Give me David Bailey, and he has moved up considerably here in NFL mock draft database. I think entering the season, I believe they had him as a third round type prospect in the 60s or so. He's now in the top 30 here at 27. And when it's all said and done, I think he'll certainly be in the top half of the first round. I muted myself and I kept on talking, but just want to take a quick sip of water. Watch my Cane struggle here with Carson Beck having to play from behind. Is that a pre-snap penalty? That's a killer right there, man. That is a killer. All right. Well, we'll see what happens here on 3rd and long, down 3 with just over 3.5 minutes left in that game. We got the Miami Dolphins on the clock. This is another bad football team, bro. Just a bad football team all around, you know. And as I think about them, it's difficult. Like, where do you start with the Miami Dolphins? Tyreek Hill obviously had the really significant injury. Do you love your receiver room? Not really. Good throw, good job there, stepping up. Defensively, they can't stop the run. They got issues on the back end. I don't know what to make of this Miami Dolphins team. They just have so many different areas that they need to improve. We're not doing any trades here. I just want to add good football players, man. Give me Caleb Downs, man. Give me Caleb Downs. I just want good football players. All right. That takes us to the New Orleans Saints. And this is another team that I think might be in the market for a quarterback, albeit I think Spencer Rattler gives them a chance to win. It gives the Saints a chance to win. And it goes back to my point regarding the 2025 draft with the Tyler Shuck pick. It didn't make sense to me. I didn't think he was a better prospect than Spencer Rattler. I'm not sure where all this love kind of came from with Tyler Shuck. But Rattler seems to be the guy. I expect him to be the starter throughout the balance of the season. Can you improve upon Rattler? Perhaps with a Dante Moore. I think you certainly can. I expect the Saints to be sellers here at the deadline. They have a lot of older players that are still fairly productive and some salary cap concerns. So I think they're going to be moving players. So let's see if we can just add a good player here. Peter Woods hasn't been terrific. I like some of the young pieces on their offensive line. You know what? I think I think I'm gonna go with Jordan Tyson. I think I'm gonna go with Jordan Tyson here. Olave might be made available. Um, I like Shaheed. Shaheed's a good player, but I think they need more pass catchers here. Give me Jordan Tyson. Wherever who's going to be playing quarterback under center for the Saints, I think having Tyson out there, who eventually becomes your number one, your go-to in the passing game, is a good building block here for the New Orleans Saints. All right, Mr. C. Tennessee. Now, Tennessee would have loved to have a Jordan Tyson because Cam Ward needs help desperately. The young man needs help. I think you're talking about one of the worst rosters in the NFL. They have a few quality football players. Jeffrey Simmons on the defensive side of the ball obviously is a guy, capital GUY. But I think this has to be about the success of Cam Ward. So if I don't have a guy that I want to go with to throw the ball to at this point, I do want someone who can protect him. Let's go with Spencer Fano. Add him to this offensive line. All right, that takes us to the Las Vegas Raiders, and the Raiders, I think, are also a team that needs to improve their offensive line, and also the quarterback position. I am Gino's been disappointed, man. I know that Brock Bowers has been hurt. I think Colton Miller got hurt recently, so certainly the supporting cast can improve. It can be improved upon, but Gino's a turnover machine, man. He's got to do a better job protecting the ball. If there's a guy that I think has some upside, maybe not quite ready, you could continue to start Gino, but I kind of like Dante Moore. I know Mr. C. Prasky was going to weigh in on Gino, being the Seahawk guy. I kind of like Dante Moore to kind of be an understudy, perhaps learn what not to do, certainly learn how to prepare, right? And be the guy perhaps as early as 2027, maybe as early as 2026. But with Gino in place, you don't necessarily have to rush more, right? I do think Moore could benefit from another year in college, but under these circumstances, I think Dante Moore is a pick for me. My future there out west. All right, that takes us to D-Kit's Giants, and they seemingly have new life with Sam Dart, Jackson Dart under center. They seemingly have new life. Of course, devastating injury from Malik Neighbors. I would have liked to see the young quarterback have his top receiver, but the Giants are playing pretty good football. I like what they have up front with the battery of defenders they have within their front seven. That's a good group. They can continue to improve the back end, though. I really do think they can continue to improve the back end. Is there someone that I like enough to take here in the top 10? Probably not. I think maybe we turn our attention to the offensive line. I think it's always important that the most important position group has a ton of high-end talent, and Francis Mauigoa, I think, could slot in at right tackle. You might have to shift a player or two, but I think you're a better offensive line with Mauigoa there at right tackle. So let's go with the big tackle out of Miami. All right, we got Dana's Cardinals here with the 9th overall pick, and I don't know what to say about Kyler Murray, man. This is another team I think, certainly on the offensive side of the ball, they can improve the supporting cast. I think their heartbeat, their engine. Connor obviously, lost to injury. He's an older back, so not sure if he'll be back. I don't love their stable. Marvin Harrison Jr. has shown more life, but he just recently got hurt. I think they could use benefit from having more pass catchers. But is there a guy that I love right now? Is there a guy? Maybe Makai Lemon. Maybe Makai Lemon. He doesn't have the prototypical size that you like this early, but he's just so effective. Hard not to like him. If we go to the offensive line, you got Lomu, you got Proctor. That might be an area to address. D-line, it might be too steep to pass up Peter Woods here. Really round out that front. And I think the Cardinals already have a good defense, but they could become a great defense. So let's go with Peter Woods here. All right. Got the Houston Texans on the clock. And in my mind, you got to protect your quarterback, CJ Stroud. I'll go with Caden Proctor. Dallas on the clock. Dallas showing some life. Defensively, they're bad. But offensively, Dak is playing at a high level. Nice job not taking a sack there, Beck. Dallas is playing at a high level, or rather, Dak is playing at a high level. They'll get CD Lamb back. I think they could certainly improve the backfield, but with the way that defense is playing, the fact that they traded Parsons away, I think you need more teeth. I think you need more teeth on the defense. Who's going to help improve this group? You got Anthony Hill, you got Arvell Reese, as I talked about. They moved CJ Allen down a bit. Let's go with Kildra Falk. Kildra Falk is a player that I think could play inside, outside, be a difference maker. You need better football players on the defensive side of the ball here in Dallas. So let's go front to back in terms of building that up. Interesting thought process there, Mrs. C. But I'm gonna go with Falk in this particular instance. All right, Cincinnati's another team that I think just needs to improve on the defensive side of the ball. I'm hearing Trey Hendrickson could finally be traded. I don't know why they waited. I'm not sure why they hesitated on that particular front. But use the timeout there, my guy. Use the timeout because I'd like to just take the lead as opposed to trying to force an overtime here. At any rate, I'm a little distracted with the Miami game coming down to the wire. But in the case of Cincinnati, this is another team where I just want to add good football players. I think Cincinnati is just missing that piece in terms of the interior offensive line. We've talked about that ad nauseum for a while. Keeping Joe Burrow healthy needs to be the priority, but I don't know that there's a guy I love here. Jake Slaughter has slid down considerably in the mock draft database because he hasn't played all that great, to be perfectly frank. Replacing Hendrickson is probably the primary objective here. TJ Parker, very high. You got Ungalele, you got Overton, but I think the player that I like most on this list is Cassius Howell, man. I think Cassius Howell is for real. You know, I love the player. You know, I know they drafted Shamar Stewart last year out of Texas A&M. I think I'm going to go back to the well here with Cassius Howell. All right, that takes us to Carolina, and Carolina is showing life, showing incremental improvements. I still think they don't do a great job of protecting the football offensively. Bryce Young turns the ball over a bit too much for my liking. Defensively, they don't have the horses. They don't have all the horses. I actually think this team could benefit from an injection. Oh, Carson threw the game away. Beck threw the game away. Can't throw that many INTs and hope to win, bro. It looks like there was a miscommunication on the play. Damn. Bad loss. Bad loss. I had a feeling on a Friday night, man. I had a feeling. Oh, man. Carson Beck. Got to be better than that, man. Let me see. Let me see this play. Bear with me, folks. Pause in the mock draft. My goodness. Oh, he caught it. Game over. Oof, boy. Carson Beck. You're not going to win very many games where you throw 3 INTs. That's just the reality of the situation. You got to protect the football. I know. A couple of instances where they overthrew it, or rather, he underthrew it deep. I thought Shannon Dawson's play calling was sketchy throughout this particular game. Louisville did a great job in terms of stopping the run up front. Yeah, Beck. That's the weak link there in Miami, unfortunately. You had this roster with Cam Ward. Who knows? Who knows? But unfortunately, Carson Beck is the weak link here in Miami. All right, back into the mock draft. I talked about adding some teeth to the second level of this defense. I think Anthony Hill Jr., CJ Allen, Arvell Reese. I think all 3 of those players are in the conversation. But I'll go with Anthony Hill Jr. I'll go with Anthony Hill Jr. in this particular instance. All right, that takes us to Kansas City, who I think is rounding into shape, and it's going to be a scary side. I said it at the beginning of the season. I think they are a better team than they were last year. They got off to a bit of a rocky start, haven't had all their pieces, but they're coming together. And I think the main thing is that the offensive line is now built. The offensive line is built to actually move people, and then of course protect the quarterback. So Kansas City is going to just get better as far as I'm concerned, and they could end up being the favorite as we get towards the end of the year. That said, considering where they're drafting at this particular juncture, I love the idea of Kenyon Sadiq. A do everything tight end with big time athleticism. You know what I'm saying? I really do think that he would fit in nicely as Travis Kelce moves on. The fact that he can make plays in the open field, and then of course he gets after it in line as well. I really like Sadiq, and I want to give my guys some credit, Drew and Headley. They pointed out Sadiq early in the process, very early in the process, and you can just see him climbing the board here. All right, that takes us to the Commanders. And I think the Commanders could benefit from addressing either side of the line of scrimmage. But I'm gonna go sexy here. I'm gonna go Jeremiah Love. I'm gonna pair him up in that backfield with Jaden Daniels and create some consternation for the defense. All right. Let's see here. The Chicago Bears, halfway through it, just about halfway through this one. The Chicago Bears, Mr. C. What you thinking? What you thinking for the Bears? I'm thinking we need to protect the quarterback. Give me Caleb Lomu. All right, that takes us to the Rams. And I think the Rams should be in the market for a quarterback, right? With Stafford's, kind of lengthy injury history, Stafford is a great player. Great player. But the back is something that never truly heals. And of course he's getting up there in age. I think as far as like operating this offense, I don't know that Sellers is the best fit, but he's the most intriguing of the prospects available. Maybe a John Mateer here. Maybe a John Mateer here would be someone that that particular organization may like. But give me Lenore Sellers here, big time athlete, big time talent. Certainly got a ways to go in terms of processing and becoming a better quarterback. I think in this particular instance, you probably have Stafford for another year or so. So Sellers may not necessarily have to start right away. All right. That takes us to the Minnesota Vikings. And the Vikings, obviously, they have hitched their wagon to J.J. McCarthy, young quarterback. He's trying to find his sea legs. They're coming off a bye, so we'll see what kind of team the Vikings look like moving forward. But I think they certainly can stand to improve their offensive line. And on the defensive side of the ball, you know what? I'm gonna go back to that linebacker room. I think Arvell Reese, his ability to obviously play off ball, but also affect the passer, I think that works very well with what Brian Flores wants to do. So give me Arvell Reese here to Minnesota. Okay, Buffalo. The Buffalo Bills, with Josh Allen and how that offense sometimes can get things going, it's really a head scratcher when they kind of get pushed around by the Falcons. Now, don't get me wrong, I like the Falcons' young football team. I like their young core, but I'm not sure. I just can't put my finger on it with Buffalo. I think at times they really struggle to stop the run. I think when it comes to January, February football, you got to be able to hold up at the point of attack. So what I'd like to do is add another big name, but I think Deion Walker's starting to come along. TJ Sanders hasn't been healthy yet, so I think he certainly can help in that regard. The receiving room is still an area where I'm not convinced. I know they got Shakir. I know they like Keon Coleman. He's flashed a little bit this year, but not consistent just yet. They're trying to get Joshua Palmer more involved. Kincaid, when healthy, has looked good this year, but I want to continue to figure out this receiving room. Give me Mekhi Lemon, man. And folks might say, man, there's some redundancy there. He's a slot receiver. No, Mekhi Lemon wins everywhere. He wins everywhere. If you got Mekhi Lemon as your top receiver, I'm not arguing with you. He's legitimate. He's legitimate. So let me add Lemon to this mix here with Josh Allen. All right, the Broncos are up next. And as I think about the Broncos, I think probably the most glaring area is that tight end position. There's nobody that I would necessarily take right now, but I think perhaps I go to the offensive line and see if I can improve this group. Give me Connor Lew. Okay, so Cleveland making the second of 2 first-round picks to this point. I went with Ruben Bain. I mentioned previously improving the offensive line here it would go a long way for the Cleveland Browns. Isaiah World, maybe. You know what? I'm going to keep Carnell Tate in the state of Ohio. I'm going to bring him to Cleveland, keep him in the state of Ohio. Make sure that Shador has some weapons as well. All right. The Rams are also a team with 2 first-round selections. First pick, I took Lenore Sellers. This time, I'm going to go with, I think they can, the aforementioned Isaiah World might be the guy. I know Devontae Adams obviously a bit longer in the tooth. You know what? Denzel Boston is a nice fit here. Some may feel like this is a bit early. I just think the way he plays as that kind of that big slot, the ability to block, you want to give him an end around. I think he just fits in very well with what Sean McVay wants to do offensively. All right, Detroit, we're going to pick up TJ Parker. I think this team needs more teeth in terms of their pass rush. No question about it. Seattle, Mr. C, what you trying to do here? Talk to me. Talk to me, Mr. C. Let's make this pick. You got Jermod McCoy, who obviously hasn't played this year due to injury. Mansour Delaney has really helped himself, improved his draft stock, like Avion Terrell. I'm a big fan of Caleb Banks. CJ Allen's my guy. I know he's slid a little bit here in these rankings, but I'm still a big fan of his. Colton Hood, another defensive back from Tennessee, has helped himself quite a bit. Mr. C, you out there? What you saying about this Seattle pick? Let me know in the comments here. Otherwise, I'm gonna make it. Interestingly enough, obviously Ernest Jones has settled in very nicely at the second level of their defense. I know Tyrese Knight was getting some run, but maybe he's hurt a little bit. They got another guy in there. I'm not sure what's happening there in terms of that linebacking room. I think Mrs. C might be a little preoccupied. So let's go with CJ Allen. Let's go get my guy. Plug him in next to Ernest Jones. New England. New England's a surprise. New England's 4-2, man. You know, they're 4-2, and Drake May is seemingly coming into his own. All those young receivers are starting to step up, led by Stephon Diggs now. I think they still need to improve their offensive line. I know they went O-line early in last year's class, but obviously the emphasis needs to continue to be getting better around Drake May and ensuring that he is outfitted with as many weapons as possible. So let's bring in Isaiah World. Let's bring in no, I'm not going to do that. Give me a receiver. Chris Brazzle's help us. You know what? Let's go Chris Bell. Chris Bell, is really announced himself this season. Let's go with Chris Bell here. See if we can get that receiving room right. Pittsburgh on the clock. I think Pittsburgh got to get young on the defensive side of the ball. Got to get young on the defensive side of the ball. I think they have some players that are a bit longer in the tooth that have dealt with injuries, perhaps not quite as effective. I love Caleb Banks, man. I know he's dealt with some injuries here this season, but I love Caleb Banks. I think he'd be a good fit here in Pittsburgh. Next to Keanu Benton and company. San Francisco, Isaiah World is the pick here. I want to make sure that, whoever is playing quarterback, we keep them upright and continue to be able to operate that wide zone. All right, Philly on the clock. And, this talks about A.J. Brown not being happy and what's going on with the passing game. I think the most important thing is that their offensive line continues to learn how to gel. They've been injured, lost a lot of talent on the defensive side of the ball, particularly in that front seven. Let's replenish that. Let's replenish that. I like the idea of adding Amari Washington. I think the quickness that he plays with at 330 pounds is uncanny. I also like Dominique Orange quite a bit here, but let's go with Amari Washington. All right, a few more selections here. We got the Chargers, who just can't seem to stay healthy, man. No matter what they do, no matter what they try, they make the right decisions, try to build this thing inside out. They just can't seem to stay healthy for whatever reason, man. And I am kind of predisposed to going back to the well as far as the offensive line is concerned, but I don't know that there's a player that I love at this juncture. So let's let's add a piece on the defensive side of the ball. I think they could stand to improve the pass rush. I don't think I heard Ngalele's name against Indiana. Again, Indiana took that game to Oregon a week ago, but I've seen some nice flashes from him this season. Another player I like is Danny Dennis Sutton and Joshua Joseph, certainly. You know what? Yeah, I'm thinking Dennis Sutton. I'm thinking Dennis Sutton, but you know what? I'm gonna go with R. Mason Thomas. I'm gonna go with R. Mason Thomas, man. I just think he's a baller flyer. I think it's just one of those things where you just kind of pick your flavor here. These players are very close in my mind. All right. So Dallas has two first round selections, part of that obviously being the Parsons trade. With the first pick, we went with Keldrick Falk. Of course, Dallas has struggled mightily on the defensive side of the ball, so it does certainly make sense to go back to the well. Jermod McCoy. Jermod McCoy has I don't believe he's played yet this year. I'm not sure he will play this year, but very impressive tape from a season ago. Um, I think that's the direction I'd like to go in, but Dallas has a tendency to go, draft guys who have dealt with injuries and take some risks there. I want to stay away from that with respect to Dallas. I want guys that are healthy and ready to go. Give me Mansour Delaney at LSU. LSU defense playing really, really well, more often than not, anyway. All right, Tampa Bay and Indianapolis. Those were not my picks for the top two teams in the NFL to this point, but here we are. Despite all of their best efforts, Tampa Bay's receiving room has been decimated once again, unfortunately. But they're managing. Baker playing at a high level. Guys been stepping up. In various positions. Bucky Irvin's hurt. Rashad White has stepped up. They've done a good job to kind of weather the storm. I think they can continue to improve their ability to get after the quarterback. And I think a guy like Harold Perkins, although Levante David is still doing it, still playing at an incredibly high level, I think he's a Hall of Famer without any doubt. I think a good heir apparent to him would be a Harold Perkins. All right. And then finally in this mock draft, a quick one, interesting one. Got the surprise Indianapolis Colts, man. They're controlling the line of scrimmage. Jonathan Taylor is doing his thing. Daniel Jones is playing well enough, at times playing at a high level. Defensively, I don't even know that they're firing on all cylinders. I think you could certainly move the football on them. So maybe that's the direction we go in here. We try to improve that group. And I'll take the aforementioned Jermod McCoy, because if he's right, he could be a difference maker here in this Colts defense. I think he has the ability to kind of take away half the field and let those pass rushers, i.e. Latu, really get after it. So let's go Jermod McCoy here to the Colts. All right. That's going to do it for my mock draft. We got Mendoza at the top. Pause this up. Mendoza at the top. I don't feel great about it, but the Jets have to make a move at quarterback, one way or the other, whether they go the veteran route. I just don't know that you can go into next year with Justin Fields. I agree that they need to get better around whoever the quarterback is, but Fields just is not playing at a starter level, right? Even, excuse me, even, as kind of an average starter level, it's well below average the way he's playing, since first week of the season. Ruben Bain to the Browns. Can you imagine Ruben Bain and Myles Garrett? You got David Bailey to the Ravens. I think he brings some legitimacy to that pass rush. When we're talking about him and Mike Green perhaps being the primary pass rushers in 2026. Kind of like that idea. Caleb Downs. I just want good football players here in Miami. Just want good football players. Jordan Tyson becomes the man. I don't know that Olave is going to be there long term. And I'm expecting quite a bit of roster turnover here with New Orleans. So let's go Jordan Tyson. I got to protect Cam Ward. I know I need some pass catchers, but certainly the primary goal has to be keep Cam Ward upright. So we go with Spencer Fano. Dante Moore will serve as understudy for Geno until Geno either falls flat or, that contract plays out. Francis Mauigoa, continues the effort to improve upon this offensive line, now protecting Jackson Dart. We get Big Peter Woods up front for Dana's Cardinals. Caden Proctor bring in to protect C.J. Stroud. We got to replace Parsons. Dallas is a terrible defense. Keldrick Falk certainly will help in that regard. I love Cassius Howell. We go back to the well here at Texas A&M edge. Expecting Trey Hendrickson to be on the move. Anthony Hill Jr. to help, bolster this defense, certainly improve that second level of the Panthers defense. Kenyon Sadiq, I think, is a perfect fit in Kansas City to replace Travis Kelce. Jeremiah Love, the guy, the merit guy, and he's been running well, but I think Jeremiah Love is just a different caliber player, and it would be terrific there. Really make it difficult for offenses trying to defend him and Jaden Daniels. Caleb Lomu to the Bears. I've maintained that the Bears can continue to improve their offensive line. I still think if you want to fashion this thing after what Detroit did with Men Johnson being the head coach, I think they have another tier or two to get to in terms of the offensive line. Lenore Sellers to be the understudy to Matt Stafford. Arvell Reese, again, big climber through the first 7-8 weeks of this college football season. What he does off ball and as a pass rusher is really impressive. I want to continue to legitimize this passing attack here with Buffalo. It just seems like sometimes those guys disappear as far as the pass catchers are concerned. And that's just not the case with Mekhi Lemon. He's always going to be where you need him to be. Connor Lew to help round out that Denver Broncos offensive line. Keep Carnell Tate in the state of Ohio, right? Really solid, dependable player who can make plays at every level of the field. I think Denzel Boston is a perfect fit here in the Rams offense, given the versatility he offers and the way he blocks and plays with physicality before and after the catch. TJ Parker opposite Aiden Hutchinson. I think that can unlock Parker. CJ Allen to the Seahawks. Mr. Prasky to really bolster the second level there with Ernest Jones. Got to give Chris Bell some love, man. Right, 6'2", 220, running away from folks, man. Listen, he's a problem, man. And I think the way Drake May is playing, you give him a piece like that, and you got something really special going on there. Caleb Banks to help get younger in the Steelers defense. This is not the Steelers defense that that generally comes to mind of being a dominant group. They are not that. They need to get younger. They need to get more explosive. I think it's certainly up front. Cam Hayward has been playing at a high level for a long time. He's just not that player anymore. TJ Watt will flash here and there, but snap in and snap out, he's not the difference maker that he once was. So want to get some better players, younger players up front there. Isaiah World to continue to make sure that offensive line remains a position group of strength. You did. Amari Washington, Philadelphia, trying to replace all of that talent that they lost, i.e. Milton Williams, who's obviously doing his thing in New England now. R. Mason Thomas, again, there was several edges we could have gone with here. It's got to just kind of pick your flavor. Mansour Delaney, I went with Keldrick Falk earlier. We go back to the SEC, get another defender to really help an ailing Cowboys defense. And then Harold Perkins and Jermon McCoy to round out this one-round mock draft. So there you have it, folks. Quick stream, solo effort. Hopefully we're back at full force next week, Mr. C. I got some content that I've been trying to get out, but life been life and haven't been able to get to it. But hopefully I'll get that out here this weekend. With that being said, I'm going to sign off, man. You can hear it in my voice. I'm not necessarily at 100% right now. So good quick show here, and enjoy the weekend of football. Take it easy.